Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for listening and welcome back to another episode of the Business Owners Freedom Formula Show, where we chat with inspiring entrepreneurs and dig into their highs, lows, and everything in between of their business building journey and learn about how they've been able to achieve ultimate freedom. In today's episode number 24, we have another great guest with us here today, and we are going to jump right in. Adam Anderson is a serial entrepreneur and author. He has been the primary investor and founder for a number of companies and is currently acting as the CEO of Ansuz Security and chairman of the board for Palmetto Security Group. With 20 years in cybersecurity and 13 as a small business owner and investor, Adam is positioned to understand the cybersecurity struggles of business owners in a way that most aren't. He co-authored the book, Small Business Cybersecurity, Your Customers Can Trust You, Right? And is a scholar in residence at Clemson University focused on cybersecurity education for business people. So that is Adam Anderson from Ansuz Security. Welcome, Adam. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, right on. That was fantastic. I feel so good about me right now.
Yeah, whoever sent that over to me did a very good job.
All right, I want to meet that guy.
Yeah, that guy. I am fortunate to be spending the next 30 or 40 minutes with that guy. So give our little listeners a little bit into what's going on in the day in the life of Adam. What's happening?
Yeah, so I'm in a really pretty sweet spot. I decided to fire myself about 3 years ago, but I don't want you to panic. I love me. I'm going to keep paying me. That's fine. But I realized that for my first company, I'd reached a point where, I was obsolete. I lost my passion for the company. I lost the desire to grow, but there were still people in the company who loved it. So I was lucky enough to be able to start promoting from within executive management. So I've been hanging out, launching failure after failure for the last 3 years.
That's the only way you'll learn and figure it out is by failing.
Right. Oh man, it's just emotional scars everywhere. It's fantastic.
Awesome. So how did you get started in the whole entrepreneurial journey? Anyway, it sounds like you've been doing cybersecurity for longer than being a business owner. So is that where you were previously?
Yeah, I was with IBM for a while, and I had a 18-hour layover in Montgomery, Alabama. And I don't know if you've ever been to Montgomery, Alabama, but the airport is horrible, right? There's nothing there. There's no bar. There's no, Wi-Fi is just a suggestion. It was horrible. I was back in 2005. So I had a legal piece of paper, legal pad, because that's the only technology in Montgomery, Alabama, in the airport.
Well, at least it was a legal pad and not just a regular size.
Well, I brought it.
You brought it. You upgraded.
I did. And I wrote it over and over again. I'm not going to do this for somebody else, right? If I'm going to do this, I've been on the road for IBM for so long at that point, my golden retriever was mad at me when I got home, right? And if you pissed off your golden retriever,
you've done something wrong.
Yeah. So I made the jump, and really all I was doing is I went into independent consulting. So I said, I'll do exactly what I'm doing now. I already have a customer base who love me. They're asking for me to leave IBM because they're paying $250 an hour. They say, why don't you start your own company? We'll pay you $185 an hour. And at that point in time, I was like, why not? So left IBM, absolutely positive I was going to go out of business every 6 months because that was the amount of. So 11 years later, I'm still waiting for the other shoe to fall, but I think we might have something. So they kept trusting me and asking for me to do more and more. And eventually I started hiring young guys and young gals. But again, I knew we were going out of business. So their titles were monkey minions. And I was like, listen, we're just going to go and work hard. I'm going to bring you into the fold. There was no coaching. There was nothing. I literally thought we were out of business. And now 20 consultants, about 3.5 revenue a year. And it's been an identity crisis having the company continue to flourish and me not being the guy who's doing it.
That is one of the things as a business owner, it might hurt the ego a little bit, but it is nice when the business can make money with or without you being there. So yeah, when you started scaling, obviously you had those, those moments where you thought you were going to fail, thought you were going out of business, then you kept, pivoting, perfecting. So what were some of those pivotal points in scaling, and now you're up to 20 consultants and doing $3.5 million a year?
Yeah. So if you haven't tapped your investments to cover payroll, then you may not have been in the fight long enough, right? So it's all billing. A lot of our customers, well, actually all of our customers are Fortune 500s. And so a lot of our revenue gets tied up in big checks. So I have sphincter tightening moments when AR begins to grow and the checks haven't cleared and I have to empty my investments out to cover payroll and then I take them back in. And so we've had I'd say we've almost gone out of business 3 times. And each time it rips your heart out because the way, for a consulting firm anyway, your biggest expense is people. And that often means you have to make the hard call and fire anybody who's not revenue generating. And it rips you up because you learn to love these people. And I don't know about you, but I think most entrepreneurs have a emotionally, fiscally unhealthy attachment to their people. I know I always fire 3 to 6 to 9 months too late, but no, those have been it. Is the big interruption in cash flow. Cash flow is king, and when something hiccups, for my company, the answer had always been to fire and then try to rehire later. Although I do have a good story, we got tired of that, and the more I trust my people, I brought the problems to them. I said, "What do you want to do?" And they said, "Well, let's all just take a temporary 15% pay cut." And that was their idea. And I said, "You would do that? That's fantastic." Yes.
Nice.
And then survived that way for 6 months. And when things got good, I reimbursed them for the pay cut they got. So everyone got a big check. So
nice.
Yeah.
That is, I think that's a good story in the sense that you're building a team of, you're actually instilling culture, and it's not just people coming in, clocking out, kind of like what you were doing with IBM. You're actually building a culture of, hey, I'm willing to give up a little bit so we can all, they saw the bigger picture that this is going to work. At the same time, they knew they had to make some sacrifices, just like entrepreneurs out there have to. That is a very encouraging story there. For anybody out there, you are not alone when you have those cash flow issues. I think that's part of being an entrepreneur instead of being an employee. But at the end of the day, at least you get to control the outcome. Whereas if you're working for IBM and they say, we can't make payroll and you're gone, that's even worse.
Yeah, that's how I process risk. People say, "Oh, you're in business, that risky?" I'm like, "Oh no." Depending on a CFO somewhere in some tall skyscraper making a call of my value, that's risky.
That is the risky part. So with that being said, who you got obviously 20 or so consultants. Who are your customers mainly today? I know you said you hit on a lot of them are Fortune 500. So who are your customers, big to small?
Yeah, so those guys for Palmetto Security Group, they are Fortune 500, particularly in retail and finance. So a lot of big banks, a lot of grocery stores and retail chains. And what we do is help those guys figure out what to do with their identities and their passwords. So we're not people's favorites.
So when things go wrong with those big companies, that the big companies take a lot of heat from that. But obviously, there's a lot of things that go on in that industry, which is just as important in the small business role. So clearly, this is your passion. You're a scholar at Clemson, helping small businesses and business people. So if I'm a small business owner, what are some things that they might need, like a small business might need to know about, what they need to know? I think there's so many things that are just the unknown until it's too late.
Yeah. So that was the whole purpose of I did a TED Talk not too long ago. And the whole purpose of that was to try to convince business owners that cybersecurity isn't a computer science problem. It's a behavioral science problem, right? It's not about the technology. All cybersecurity is technology controls on top of business processes. So I'll give you an example of where technology wasn't the right answer for cybersecurity for my small business. Holding all of those username and passwords for Fortune 500 companies, liability through the roof, right? Absolutely. If I get hacked, we're done. Everyone's done. I'll have to call my mom and be like, "We need your house too." I'm sorry. That's where we're going. But, so we didn't want that liability. So I just told the customer, I refuse to have computers with that data on it. You have to issue me laptops to work on using your security and doing all that. So I want to convince, or I want to get this message out to business owners. if you're not looking at cybersecurity and you're doing it because it seems like it's scary or there's no way you're going to win, I want to encourage you that small business process changes can absolutely reduce your cyber threat by so much. That often that doesn't land well, right?
No.
Because what they really want me to say is, man, if you buy a product XYZ and
it'll do it all,
and you're fine, you can just throw money at it. Actually, it'll be fine. Just do that.
Right.
Yeah.
I would totally agree. I mean, I think those are things where it's like, it has to be done, but nobody wants to deal with it. So it's like, can I just pay somebody to do it?
Yeah. Well, the good news is you can, but you just have to take a few steps before you do it, right?
Right. And I think that's really what we talk about on the show is before you delegate, before you outsource, whatever you're looking at, you want to make sure you have your systems and processes in place, nailed down, finalized.
Yes.
You can always improve it, but if you have those to work off of, then when you do go delegate it, like you said, it makes it a lot easier, and it's behavioral science instead of computer science.
Yeah, it's no different than owning your selling system, right? You know exactly what you need to do to have the business processes execute. Same thing's true with cybersecurity. Man, all it is coming up with the right strategy, understanding your daily behaviors, and then applying the right technology to it. It's simple. No other business system, right? People are so scared about it, though. But to me, honestly, I'd rather focus on my selling system because revenue can solve a whole lot of problems, and cybersecurity is so confusing that often for small businesses, the right answer isn't defense, it's recovery, right? You get yourself some good backups, get yourself some good cyber insurance, and as needed, apply new technologies. But no, don't spend all this money on all this defense stuff. The Russians and Chinese, they're going to get through. It's going to happen. So focus on
back
recovery.
Up instead.
Yeah, focus on recovery. Make the hack obsolete. Why spend all this time and effort worrying about somebody getting in if you can make it so that after they get in, there's little to no impact.
That is a great point. And I think that, the key there, and I always do the same thing, is you just build a system around it. So build a system where your business backs up every day, and worst comes to worst, you just have to start over from yesterday. And instead of worrying about spending all the money to keep people out that are going to get in, like you said, either way, they'll where there's a will, there's a way. And if they're that malicious, they don't really care what you put up.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, one of the sad, I love statistics because they tell you nothing, in my opinion. But I feel like if I talk about cyber, I have to have statistics at hand. Otherwise, no one believes me at a dinner party. And that's important to me. So
that is true. So what are some good stats you got there?
Okay. Here
just give us a few. What do you think?
Right. So the most important one is 75% of your employees do risky things online while they're on your computers, right? I can tell you a whole bunch of stuff about cybercrime and blah, blah, blah. But the end of the day is don't spend money on defense if your employees are just going to click on that link coming through email. Right? Oh, we just deployed $1 million firewall, blah, blah. And Tom, click, let him in. Right? So if your employees are naturally going to open the door, so to speak, that's just something to pay attention to.
There you go. So if you do have employees with company material, company technology infrastructure, keep that in mind, 75% of them. And just like any statistic like that, when you look around the room, you're like, well, I would never do that. Well, but you just might. So that is really good insight. And I think really the key takeaway from everything of what you're doing is, just focus on the things you can control, because you can't control everything.
Yeah.
And then put systems in place around it. So with that being said, you're building businesses, entrepreneur, never going back to the corporate world. What's the normal day look like these days for you?
I love this because this is kind of justification for all the effort. So I don't wake up until around 7:00, and then I make sure everyone else in the house is awake before I am. So if I have to stay in bed till 7:30, I will do it. I get a cup of coffee. Take my kids to school in the morning around 8:00. Then I'm in the gym from 8:30 to 10:30. Come home, play my guitar a little bit. Then I go out to lunch with somebody interesting. And then I've got about 2 hours in the afternoon where I work, where I'm creating and processing. I do better at short spurts, high intensity. Then maybe a happy hour with some other folks who are good networking, but I try to be home for dinner with my kids every day, with the wife. I've sacrificed a lot over the years to launch this stuff. And so I'm attempting to prove to myself that I can launch companies without having to do 80-hour weeks, right? And so it's working. It turns out that 80-20 rule thing, there's something to it.
That actually, that statistic's real.
Right? Well, I mean, 99% of them that I tell you, 100% of them are real, et cetera, right? So I'm really discovering that in this daily life, if I focus on spending the right time with the right activity, and I branch that out more than just focus on business processes, because that was my problem for 9 years. Almost lost a marriage because I was so focused on the business. And man, it's not worth it. These are mechanisms to help us produce lifestyles that we want. So why don't we be intentional with the lifestyles that we're picking?
That is well said. Totally agree. And really using that business to build a life that you love, a life that you want.
Yeah.
And if you can do it, I think a lot of people get stuck in, I'm the only one that can do it. I want to do everything. I got to do this. I got to do this. Always doing something, but not really producing anything. And put people in those roles to do those things. So then you can leverage that, leverage your time, leverage your expertise. Like you said, now you can launch businesses, a lot less time, a lot less money, because you've put in the hard work over the course of 10 plus years, learning what works, what doesn't work, and taking that, helping other people do that. I think that is a phenomenal takeaway. And when you do work, you're in it 100%. For 2 straight hours intense, people might look at you like, well, you only work 10 hours a week, but you probably get more done in 10 hours than the average 40-hour-a-week employee.
I would hope.
Yes. So very exciting there. And kind of alluding to that, we obviously like to talk about freedom. How do you make sure that you kind of stay on task and achieve your ideal view of freedom on a daily basis?
So I'm a big fan of masterminds, and I've got a group that I've been a part of for about 7 years. And one of my buddies called me out. I said, Adam, you've got ADHD, you're dyslexic, you're not really an adult. There's a lot of things wrong with you. I think it might be time to outsource your self-discipline. So I make sure not only do I use a bunch of technology, I make sure I have a human being who is the opposite of me there to help manage my time. I have a Monday meeting with a project manager. Back when I was running Palmetto Security Group, I had a dedicated assistant. I called a duck, and I am not the guy who does blocking and tackling around details. So I hire human beings who leverage technology that interfaces with me. And some people can do it without, some people can do it. But for me, that's exactly what I needed. And you know what? A full-time assistant is like $34K a year. That's like some software products. I'm like, and I get a hell lot better customer service from a human being. It's all right.
That is not a bad way to look at it. And I think, like you said, the power of a mastermind, people that will tell you how it is, see what they, tell you their opinion on outside looking in, because a lot of times we just get caught up in, I'm doing fine, but really encourage everybody. If you aren't part of a mastermind, don't know what a mastermind is, definitely, reach out and get into a group of people, whether it's peers, same type of business owners, whatever it is, to hold you accountable. Because I think the accountability part of anything, if you tell somebody you're going to do something, or you tell somebody you're not going to do something, you're much more likely to follow through when you have that accountability group. So good words of encouragement there. And then what's next for the life of Adam and the businesses you're building? What's the future look like?
So I'm probably going to sell my first company, which, you talk about identity crisis and ego and all that. That is going to happen. But the good news is that it looks like it'll be internal. So I'll be able to turn something that I care about over to people who actually, care about it. But what I'm super excited about now is the idea of how do I help small businesses learn about cybersecurity? How do I help them answer that question? Should I even care? Because you know what? If you're Amish and you're making rocking chairs and you're selling them at a flea market and you're taking cash, there's not a whole lot of reasons for you to care about cybersecurity. Now, not all of our companies are that manual, but there is a point where people just analysis paralysis, they're terrified. And when you're scared, you make bad decisions or no decision at all. So I want to help small business owners lessen that fear so they can make intelligent decisions around cyber, because this is not going away. It is only going to get more complicated. And the world is a dangerous place if you don't know what you're doing. But you know what? So was crossing the street.
Yeah.
I
I use that analogy all the time. I mean, everything we do, we take a risk. And, if you don't know what you're doing, or even if you're going on a trip and people say, oh, that place is dangerous. Well, it's dangerous if you don't know where you're going. Maybe you get turned around and go the wrong way. But if you have a plan in place to keep you safe, I think that's a great analogy. I mean, getting in your car is dangerous. Brushing your teeth is dangerous. So, there's a lot of things when you put it that way, puts it a lot more in perspective. So, really excited to see what you're doing helping small businesses. That's really what I really love seeing the small business owners, the local business owners, because these are things that they're working in their business so much that they might not even think about these things until they're too late. And when they got someone like you on their side who's been doing this for a long time and knows, strategically how to prevent it in a proactive way, other than just throwing money at it and hoping it works, actually putting a system around it, which is I'm a big fan of, so that if it does happen, basically, how are we going to make that right? So that is really exciting stuff. Adam, really appreciate you, coming on the show, giving people an insight and making cybersecurity not so scary. It isn't scary. It's a part of life. And if you're a business owner, if you're not thinking about it, you definitely need to be thinking about it. So just like all other good things, they do come to an end, and we are all about freedom on the show. So we don't want to take up too much more of your time or our listeners' time. But before we sign off, it is time for our rapid recommendations for all things related to systems, automation, and freedom. So I've got 6 topics here. You're going to give our listeners one topic, one thing that is going to inspire them to go check it out at the end of the show. So the first things first, what is one book that you recommend any business owner read?
I love Built to Sell.
Built to Sell. That is my number one book. That was the first ever book that I read when I was sick of working in my business too much. And the whole premise of building your business to sell, even if you never want to sell it, everybody should be doing it, because I think a lot of people, they think I never want to sell this business, but even if you don't want to sell it, you want it to be sellable. Definitely recommend everybody checking that book out, Built to Sell by John Warlow. We'll link it up in the show notes on our website. What about one quote that you like to live by?
I like from Viktor Frankl. It's what gives light must endure burning. What we do is very difficult. It takes effort, but you know what? We can't produce this light in the world if we're not willing to put the effort in to get there. And guess what? Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it's hot. Suck it up and work hard. I mean, it's okay. It's okay. That's the process.
That is part of the process. And I think a lot of people in the social media world just see the overnight success, but there is no overnight success. You got to feel the heat. You got to feel the burn, to produce that light. That's a really, really good, inspiring quote. What about one tool that you like to use on a regular basis?
So the one that is sitting on my heart right now is Asana, because I am so unorganized, and bless my people's heart trying to get me in that tool to keep doing it. That's good. But you know what? I'm going to pivot that. Video Scribe. I love making whiteboard videos and producing my own videos in this sweet spot. So if I'm working with other people, Asana, but when I have that 2 hours of building content and education, I love creating whiteboard videos, and Video Scribe is a fantastic tool for that.
Totally agree. I've used both. Definitely recommend both. We'll link those up in the show notes. What about one podcast that you like to listen to?
I dig the Tropical MBA, Location Independent Entrepreneurship.
Love it. What about one community that you like to hang out in, whether it's in person, online? Where do your people hang out?
It is called Chief Executive Boards International. It's a mastermind group that's been around for about 30 years. And these are day-long meetings that we sit down and we get together nationally for 3 or 4 days. And it's more of like a conference thing than a quick fire mastermind. And you only see these guys every 3 months. But some of my best friends in the world are from Chief Executive Boards.
Awesome. We'll definitely check that out and link that up. And then last but not least, what's one parting piece of advice for any business owner out there who is stuck, burned out, or just trying to get over the hump?
Alcohol's not the answer. It's not. You can't drink through it. So no, but seriously, you're not alone, right? Find people who've been there, share your problems. There's really not a lot of new stuff out there that we all haven't faced, and you can get help. And if you don't like masterminds, I hired a coach. I realized I was an idiot around 6 years into this, and I say that flippantly, but I've hired somebody who has done what I'm trying to do better and before, and I hired them to come in. So if I was building a selling system, I got a professional who knew how to build a selling system, marketing, HR, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you're stuck, call an audible. Go get somebody to help. It's okay. You don't have to have the answers.
That is so true. You don't have to be Superman. Don't have to try and figure everything else out. Somebody else has done it. No need to reinvent the wheel. So
yeah.
Really good parting piece of advice there, Adam. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to impart some of your knowledge, wisdom, and enthusiasm to our community. Hopefully this helps everyone out there get one step closer to achieving ultimate freedom in their business and in life. But before we sign off, where can our listeners go to keep in touch with you?
So head on over to adamanderson.info/BOFF.
Perfect. We'll link that up, adamanderson.info/BOFF. He's set up a nice landing page just for our listeners, all you business owners out there. If you want to hang out with him on social media, Adam Anderson, CEO, over there on Twitter, I believe.
Yep.
Thank you so much again, Adam. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Everybody else out there, stay tuned for next week's episode as we dive into another fantastic interview with Ray Razor Matz from Game Changing Dads. And if you like what you're hearing, or if you don't like what you're hearing, we'd always appreciate a friendly review, subscribe, and share with your friends so we know what's going on out there and how we can make our show better. So don't forget, you can join our free Facebook group at bizfreedomformula.com. Head on over to that link. It'll forward you onto the Facebook group where you can continue the conversation with like-minded entrepreneurs who are putting the plans in place to work less, make more, and increase the value of their business while achieving ultimate freedom. Adam, thank you so much again for spending some time with us. Really appreciate it.
Happy to. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Until next time, keep rocking. Trust the process. We'll talk to you guys soon.